I recognized that I was frustrated inside that corporate entity. I wanted to think bigger about things or think about what
Yeah.
was possible, and that's kind of what the women I was helping work through that messy middle, they too were like, "But wait, there's something else. There is something at the end of the tunnel, and how do you get there?"
Today's episode is brought to you by Andy Bovender, the founder of the Bovender team out of the Carolinas. Him and his team have helped more than 5,000 families. So if you have a client who's been thinking about making a move to or from that area, they are the referral partner to call. Today, I sit down with Andrea Liebross, and she shares how she helps her clients, business owners, get unstuck using the TRUST acronym. So stay tuned for that. And if you've been feeling a little stuck in needing your own little community, micro community within a community to volley ideas, maybe gain some inspiration, or even share referrals, take a look at the link below for the Inner Circle group. And as always, I'm your referral partner out of San Francisco, Shawn Kunkler. Andrea, we are live. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. So, really quick to get the listeners up to speed super fast in a couple sentences. Who are you and what do you do?
All right. So, I am Andrea Liebross. I live outside of Indianapolis, Indiana, but I am an East Coast girl at heart. I grew up in Massachusetts. And I work virtually with primarily women. Everything I do does pertain to men, but I work primarily with women across the globe who are in the process of growing or scaling a business. So I come in and support them in helping make decisions. I like to say in helping them integrate their business into their life. So sometimes I say I'm a little bit of a life balance architect and really be a partner or a guide or a Sherpa, I like to say, in climbing that mountain from where they are now to where they want to go.
I like that.
That's what I'm doing.
The concept of Sherpa, I love that. I love that
Yeah.
for our industry because that's what we do. Like we basically
Yeah.
we guide clients to a destination that they want to get to.
That is
So I love
totally
that.
that's exact. And I have a lot of clients who are in real estate because they need a Sherpa themselves.
For sure.
Right? Yeah.
I mean, I've said it on this podcast. I don't even know how many times, but if you look at any pro athlete
Mm-hmm.
from day one to the day when they achieve the greatest win, they've always had a coach. They've always
Right.
had somebody. They've always had their Sherpa. Like somebody's always
Yes.
been there being like, hey, you know what? That thing that you did that's really awesome, do more of that. And
Right.
stop doing that other thing that didn't work.
Yep. Yep. It's so true. And I think that we get to a place where we think I can do it alone, or I'm going to go it alone. I'm going to give it a try. I'm going to go it alone. Right.
Mm.
And I actually just had a big discussion with a client about this. So in your business, there's costs and then there's also investments, and they both require dollars. Right. But, I think working or having a guide of some sort is really an investment because it's going to help you be more efficient. It's gonna create growth. It's gonna help you create efficiency. So I see that guide category as an investment, not really a cost.
I would
Side note.
agree.
Yeah.
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 I totally. I mean, there's times. I don't care what industry it is. There's times when you work on the business, and then there's times when you work in the business, and separating the two, and then realizing where either you or the team need to skill up
Yep.
is incredibly important. And sometimes even recognizing all of that, you
Yeah.
sometimes just need somebody on your shoulder pointing it out to you, because we get so wrapped up working in the operations of the business, we lose track of that big picture, and we
Yes.
hinder ourselves from actually thinking big, which is another topic that you tap into.
Totally. And I think if you think about just what real estate agents do in general, right? Someone could sell their house by themselves. I mean, it's possible, but
Mm-hmm.
you're helping make it easier. You're guiding, you're seeing things that the homeowner wouldn't, or seller, buyer, whoever we're working with wouldn't see, right? So it's sort of the same type of concept. Yes.
It's such a good that's such an easy way to pull it back in because
Yep.
I always tell my clients is we're in a dark room and I'm the one with the flashlight and I'm happy to shine on all the things that I don't want you to trip on. And that's
Mhm.
your role is the same thing. It's like
Mhm. Yeah,
we're so focused over here that we're not focused on this other thing and asking for help, which is hard. I think
it
additionally
is.
because in leadership roles, regardless of industry, you tend to I know I've got you kind of have to be the person in the room with the answers. And so
Right.
it's hard to go to another room and say, I don't actually have the answers and I need
Yeah.
help.
Yeah, and I think it's, you also sometimes you don't even think you need help, right? And but someone like I like to say we're stuck in our own peanut butter jars and we can't when we're so deep in the jar, it's so sticky, we can't even climb up to kind of read look and see what's outside or read the label even of the jar. And I think that's again where a guide, a mentor, a coach comes into play.
That's so again, it's such a good way to look at it because we do. I mean, we get wrapped up in lists and projects and getting going after that next thing that
Yep,
to your point, you don't go outside the jar to look at the label. You've totally
correct.
missed like, are you even
Correct.
in the right jar?
Right, right. You even right. Are you on the right shelf? I don't know. There's so many ways we can
Exactly.
think about it. Yep,
I'm super curious about I'm curious about your business and I'm curious about your practice. But what
sure.
inspired you to focus on working with women?
So, way back in the day in a previous job I had or role I played inside a corporate entity, I was tasked with recruiting and hiring and training
Mm.
basically new franchise owners. They weren't on paper, they didn't own a franchise, but basically they owned a franchise.
Mhm.
And I stayed there for 10 years. I first of all was one of those people that got recruited, and then I melded into this business development role, and I stayed for 10 years, and at the end, I left because I had had enough of the powers that be saying, "Oh, Andrea, such a great idea, but we can't do that because of X, Y, and Z." Okay, so but when I assessed, why did I stay for that long or what were the parts
Mm.
of it that I loved? The part I really loved was helping these new business owners get through what now I would call or have dubbed the messy middle. So, this is where you have started in on a new adventure, you've grown a business, it's actually happening, you're creating profit, and you realize, huh, I something's got to give here. This is feeling very hustly. I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm still wearing all of the hats. I can't do this anymore. And you start to question whether or not this is the right thing for you or can you afford bringing on help, right? So this happens to in agents. I know this happens the same sort of thing.
Oh yeah.
So I really enjoyed getting them through that first cycle because this happens again and again in your business as you grow, but we'll
Yeah.
call it like loop number 1. I really was passionate about helping them get back to why they were doing something and giving them the tools to create that next level of growth. But I think most importantly was giving them or helping them shift the way they were thinking about things. So I always say
Right.
success has 2 ingredients, mindset and systems, and it's 80% mindset and 20% systems. And that's kind of where that's how I kind of got into what I'm doing. And I also just well, not just now, it was in September of 23 released a book called She Thinks Big. And I tell that story at the beginning because I recognized that I was frustrated inside that corporate entity. I wanted to think bigger about things or think about what
Yeah.
was possible. And that's kind of what the women I was helping work through that messy middle, they too were like, "But wait, there's something else. There is something at the end of the tunnel. And how do you get there?" So that's kind of how I got to what I'm doing now.
That messy middle sucks.
It
I
sucks. It does
it's
suck.
so tough. I've been there, and I feel like I'm going into it.
Yeah, well,
Like
it keeps happening, right?
it
It's
keeps
not a one
happening.
and done. It is not a one and done. No. But
I
you
mean,
get
that's
bigger, you get better at it, and it gets smaller relative to the loop, I'll call it. Like if I think of our cycles of our business as big
yeah.
loops, that messy middle gets smaller relative to the size of the loop.
Have you been completely neglecting your newsletter, social media, or any of your outbound marketing? If so, I have a solution for you. With little to no commitment, a virtual assistant can jump in and help you in those areas you just don't have the time for. For more information about hiring a virtual assistant, go ahead and follow the link in the description below. That's
I don't know.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would imagine I'm like thinking through in my own experiences. I would imagine you develop some sort of sensory acuity where you start once you've been through it, you start then recognizing it and seeing the
Mhm.
patterns, and then having some ideas of, to your point, it kind of you can compress it because it's, oh, I've seen this curveball before, and I know how to think about it, or at least recognize that it's happening to then call in help or to
Yes.
like recalibrate it in a new way.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah.
I'm curious, was the industry that you were previously in, was it more female?
It was more female. I worked for a company that designed and manufactured a line of women's clothing, and
Mm,
it was sold in a store in storefronts, but direct to the customer. So it was all by appointment. So the women, or mostly women, there were men, but mostly were women who bought into this opportunity, had to create their own book of business
yeah.
and really manage and run their own business under this corporate umbrella. So
Mm,
that's why it was kind of like a franchise, even though it wasn't a franchise. They were
yeah.
given some bare bones to it, but in the end, it was up to them. So, and they had to figure out how to create the support systems they needed in terms of people and platforms and everything else.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's interesting in relating that to real estate is everything has a terminal velocity. It's like
Yes.
once any aspect of the business hits a certain point, it becomes too cumbersome for one person or one
Right.
system, and then
Right.
it's okay. Then like how do I step back, reflect as to the big picture, and then what support do I need? Is it people? Is it processes? Is it
Yeah.
systems? Like what is the actual solve? But I think more importantly, and the hard part is when you're in the weeds, is well, what is the big picture? Like
Yeah.
where is this thing actually going?
So the title of my book is She Thinks Big, and I have a podcast by the same name, She Thinks Big. And I kind of as I've talked about this now for several years, I use the word trust as an acronym to explain
Mm,
what I think all big thinkers do, or kind of the tenets of big thinking. And the first T in trust stands for thought options. So what I mean by that is if you think about those who you would deem as successful or society's big thinkers of the world, they
mhm,
often look at things through a different lens. And I think it's hard for us as humans to do that. But if you just think of any, like if we say, all right, it's an 80-degree day and it's 80 degrees and sunny, and we got options of how we want to think about 80 degrees and sunny. We could think, "Oh, great. That's the perfect temperature. I'm going to spend all day outside." We could think, "That's why today, cuz today is the day I have to be stuck inside all day." We
mm,
could think 80's too hot. We could think 80's too cold, right? We have options of how we want to think about that one fact. And I think when you think about what's possible, or if you are a big thinker who is thinking more into the future,
mhm.
you recognize those options and you are not stuck in the present. um I also like to say, like, the past is a teacher, can be a teacher, but it is not a fortune teller. So
Interesting.
just because the last time it was 80 degrees and sunny, you know, you got a sunburn. Okay. That's the past. You learned something. Now we can put on some sunscreen and create a different future. Right. So
Yeah.
the past can be a teacher, but it's not a fortune teller. And I think that's another thing if we're trying to grow businesses or be successful and feel like our life and business is integrated, we've got to recognize all those thought options.
Hey, real estate pros, be honest. You know you should be using video, but maybe you feel awkward, don't have the time, or just aren't seeing the results. This is where Kim Rittberg's Video Bootcamp comes in. This live coaching program helps agents create high quality videos quickly and confidently, resulting in leads and clients. Her students have seen results. One landed 3 new clients directly from social media, and others brought in millions of dollars in closed sales. Spots are limited, and to apply now, follow the link in the description below.
I think that's, I mean, as you know, because you do this, it's hard to separate
Oh, it's so
the
hard.
two.
It's so hard. It's really, our brain wants to go to what, and there's neuroscience behind this. Our brain wants to go to thoughts that keep us safe, that are comfortable,
Mm-hmm.
and that bring efficiency in that we already know how to do that. So, the safe thought might be, I don't want to invest I don't want to bring on someone new. Things are going fine as there is. There's really no problems, so to speak, right? Nothing's broken. So it's a lot safer to just stay kind of at status quo, right? It's a lot easier to stay status quo because then we don't have to train someone. It's more efficient because we're not putting out more time towards that new person. So
Yeah.
the thought that our brain wants to go to is, well, we'll reassess next month. Or I don't know. I mean, I'm okay now, right? That's
Yeah.
like the safe, efficient, comfortable thought. And our brains are trained to do that. We want to stay safe and comfortable, and we
Mm-hmm,
want
mm-hmm,
things to be
mm-hmm.
easy, right? So no wonder it's hard to go to that place that says, yes, I am going to hire the person, and B, stay in that headspace of this was the right decision. So T in that trust acronym stands for thought options.
It's fascinating. And in this podcast, I want to say your guest probably 135, 140, somewhere in there.
Okay.
And I would say the one thing that I've discovered from talking to so many high performers is their ability to evaluate. And I
Yeah.
feel like it's directly related to what you're saying, is they have the ability to step back and then say, yes, it was 80 degrees that day, and yes, I got sunburn, but does that mean 80-degree days give me sunburn? And they're able
Right.
to kind of like separate those two pieces. And to your point, they're like, well, no, this thing doesn't cause that thing. But what I learned is I just put sunblock on if I'm going to be in the sun all day. And so that's a new system, is really what happens, is they kind of navigate it.
Yep. Yeah.
It's interesting. I was just having a conversation with a different set of friends, and we were talking about the stories that we tell ourselves, either consciously or subconsciously.
Yep.
And the difference is stepping back and evaluating those, and then what are you then reflecting out into the world? Like, are
Right.
you reflecting out that you're just now terrified of 80-degree weather and hiding from it all the time, and hiding indoors and hiding away from the sun? Or are you just course correcting, and I'll wear a hat, or I'll throw on sunblock?
Right. So our thoughts basically, there are stories, right? Our thoughts are our stories. So we tend to tell the same comfortable, same stories over and over again. And this is like a skill too. So assessing things using your terminology, that is a skill. Like not everybody can
Yes.
do that, can stay in that headspace of assessing.
I think it's interesting, and I agree. I think it's impossible to stay there, but it's kind
Yep.
of like working out. You can't work out 24 hours a day,
Right.
but you
Right.
can carve out time to go work out. And
Yes.
it's like intentionally carving in your day. Okay, I'm going to set an hour aside. I'm going to turn everything off and I'm just going to reflect and
Yep.
evaluate. Like, I'm not going to draw opinions. I'm just going to look at the business objectively and
Right.
like, just looking at even as simply as like your finances. Those
Mm-hmm.
aren't opinions, those are facts. And it's like
Mm-hmm.
within those facts, is this account growing or is it shrinking? If it's shrinking, let's look at these things and what's causing it to shrink.
Right.
And I think it just, and what I've discovered is that carving out either the time or the space, meaning a coach,
Mm-hmm.
have
Mm-hmm.
like pull somebody in who knows how to ask you the right questions to get to that goal.
Right. I think that's you, like you're stuck in your own peanut butter jar, going back to that, right?
Yeah, I love that analogy. It's
Yeah.
such a good one.
Yeah. And I think the thing is, when we're in that peanut butter jar, we feel honestly safe in a sense. So going back to
Mm,
that acronym I have, trust, the R in trust really stands for, stands for real problem.
mm,
And big thinkers know that there is no real problem. The only problem is you not wanting to experience a negative feeling. Okay. So
good point.
99.999% of the time, there's really no problem. Okay. Like everybody's still alive. So there's really no problem. The problem is that you don't want to feel doubt. You don't want to feel discomfort. You don't want to
Mm,
feel frustrated. You don't want to feel disappointed. Right. So all these things, like that's the problem. So it's kind of good news in a sense, because we all know how to do all of those feelings because we're human.
yeah.
So if you're willing, you got to be willing to experience those things in order to move forward, or in order to get to that next level of growth, right? So even if you have to be willing to, going back to someone asking you questions, you've got to be willing for someone to ask you a question that may not feel so great, or it may stir something up. So I think sometimes when people don't um have that guide, or on purpose don't take the Sherpa with them, it's because
Yeah.
they're avoiding even the discomfort in someone asking questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's therapy.
Yes, right, right. Exactly. Exactly. So that real problem is a great thing to recognize, that there's no problem. It's just that you're human. You don't want to feel something that you don't love.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It makes me also think too, we have a spectrum of feelings, but as
totally.
soon as this thing that comes up that's a problem, we usually just give it one label,
Right.
and
Right.
we don't really dive into. It's like, oh, that gives me pause, whatever that means for you. But then
Yes.
that's it. You just stop and you go do that thing that's comfortable.
Yep.
But it's like, well, what's define pause? Like, is it fear? Is it anxiety? Is it uncertainty?
Yep.
Like, if you dig into it, it usually starts breaking apart a little bit.
Mhm.
And then you
Mhm.
can figure out, oh, I need a skill, or I need this, or
Mhm.
I just need to ask for help.
Right. I just need to ask for help. And um asking for help can be uncomfortable,
Yeah.
right? So that's a whole other ball of wax there. But if you really think about the things that we label as problems, um like if you say, should I ask the other agent if they will waive whatever, whatever, like, can we just, or should I ask Shawn what he thinks? Okay. Whatever that is,
Mm,
what's the worst thing that can happen? The agent says no. Shawn says, I can't help you. Like, that's not so bad. That's like,
yeah.
okay. So it stops us in our tracks sometimes when really we're missing out on a huge opportunity.
Great point. It's funny, I lost this one and you just reminded me of it. But I used to reduce it to the ridiculous, meaning I would literally ask myself, well, if I do this thing, will I die? And
No,
I'd be like,
right?
well, no, I'm not going to die. Okay. Is it going to be
Okay.
uncomfortable? Yeah, it's going to be uncomfortable. And then it's like, okay. And then you just kind of like, I have to like step back and start breaking it down. But I start with so ridiculous. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
am I
Mm-hmm.
going to die? Well, no, you're not going
No.
to die. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's
Yep.
good. You're going to be like physically safe. Okay.
Yes.
And then let's go down this path. Um,
Yep. That's what I say. I'm always like, what's the worst thing that can happen? Nothing. Like usually, I don't know. I'm just it's not gonna feel good. It's not gonna feel good. Which the third thing in that trust, that U stands for uncertainty and uncomfortable. So all big
mm,
thinkers realize that they have to embrace uncertainty and discomfort. And I think that's where having this guide, Sherpa, coach, mentor comes into, is
mm,
helping you kind of neutralize that discomfort or that
yeah.
uncertainty. None of us really know what's going to happen this afternoon, right? We don't really know. So again, we nothing's there's no guarantees. So we
Yeah.
all, like, life is uncertain. So when someone
Yeah.
says, I want to make sure I have all my ducks lined up in a row before I X, right? I want to make sure they are trying to eliminate the uncertainty. They are
Yeah.
trying to eliminate the uncomfortable. And sometimes you just can't do that. You
You
just
can't.
can't do that. Right. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny when you said, I want to line up all the ducks, my brain immediately went to all of them.
Right. Right.
Define how many is all? Like, that's a
Right.
lot of ducks.
That's
If
a
we look
lot
in
of
the
ducks.
entire world, that is a lot of ducks. And you want to get all of them in a line?
Yes. Yes. It's tricky.
It's
It is
funny.
tricky.
I always tell my clients, okay, we're going to go look at a bunch of properties and I want you to rate them on a scale of 1 to 10. But I'm going to be
Mm-hmm.
honest with you, there's no 10s, there's no 9s, and there's also no 8s. There's always
Mm.
going to be something about a property that it's perfect, but it's
Yes.
perfect, but I don't like the color of the bathroom. It's perfect, but I really wish this wall was moved. It's
Uh-huh.
perfect, but and I don't care if it's a $100,000 house or a $10 million house. Every client, well, one of them is they always want to be in the next price bracket. And then the
Mm-hmm.
other is there's nothing, it's never going to be perfect. And so if you're to reflect it back on business, if you're waiting for all your ducks to be in a row, meaning it's perfect, you're going to just
You
be you're just
you're gonna
waiting.
be waiting. You're gonna be waiting a very long time. Yeah.
It's like you're waiting for that perfect shot. It's
Yeah.
never you either create it or you walk away. But
Right.
if you're just waiting for perfection in advance, you're dead in the water.
Yeah. And sometimes you need that little nudge
Yeah.
or the support to get you over that hump. And that's the S in trust, stands for securing support. So I don't know
Mm,
anyone out there who, you know, is successful, thinks big, who doesn't have the right kinds of support behind them. It's kind of like, I didn't do this alone. There's a lot of speeches that said, right? I want to thank all the people that helped me get here. And that's true. So if you're feeling, if you don't have to feel so alone, you can't do it alone. So I encourage any listener out there to really find or seek someone to support you
yeah.
and ask you those questions and help you make those decisions more efficiently.
It's funny that you specifically said that. The CEO of Compass, Robert Refkin,
Hmm.
literally wrote a book that's titled "No One Succeeds Alone."
Yeah, that's true, right? It's so true. It's so true.
Business, it does not happen in a vacuum, and I
No.
think that's such a fallacy that some have created for themselves. It's you need the support, you need the team, you need your tribe, you need your family.
Mhm. Mhm.
All of that is to help get to that thing. And usually when you're stuck in a business, It's usually a system of process, which means it's either a skill or a person
Right.
that needs to come in and fill it. And if it's not you, then who? And
Right.
so it's
Yeah, in my book, I have a chapter about support, and
mm,
I break the chapter into two parts. Is it people, a person that needs to support you, or is it a software or tool that needs to support you? And trying to figure that out, usually that's probably the easy part. But then it's finding the right match in one of those categories. So I also love it when I hear some of my clients say, "Oh, I'm going to pause right now, but I might be back." Right? I might be back. And it, right there, it's like that should give you pause because you're seeing the value in it. And why would you want to pause or take a break and
yeah.
have to kind of catch back up again? So think about that too. Who or whatever is supporting you. Like
Mm,
if there's any inkling of I might be back, then you probably shouldn't stop.
It's
Yep.
it's funny. My world before I got into this business, I ran martial arts schools and then I was in the health and fitness sector. And a lot of the trainers would work with high level executives and CEOs and who would work out multiple days a week. And the trainer, the coach, is there to guide them through the
Mm-hmm.
workout and put it
Mm-hmm.
together to help them achieve their goals. But the moment that person stops and says, I might be back, their progress stops.
Yeah.
They go back to eating unhealthy.
Yep.
They go back to just doing unhealthy choices, and their progress, all the progress they've made, just immediately goes away, goes back
Yeah.
to the neutral
Yeah.
point.
Yeah. So it's like, why does our brain want to pause or take a break or stop?
Why
That's
is
like
that? Why do you think that is?
I think because it's work, right? Like think about training, personal training, fitness, right?
Yeah,
It
true.
is, there's a reason it's called a workout, right? It's work.
Good point.
It's work. So it's much easier to sit on the couch or to hit the snooze button. That's so much easier than getting
True.
up and doing the workout. And I think even when we talk about
Mm,
business, um, having a support system, having a coach or a mentor or whatever, like even a community of people, they're going to
mhm.
ask you, "Hey, how'd that go? What happened?" And if you're saying, "Oh man, I never did it," right? And it's so it's easier to just not do the thing. It's easier to not have someone asking you the questions. It's easier to not know what you even need to or should be doing or think you should be
Yeah.
doing, right? So it goes back to that motivational triad: ease, comfort, efficiency, right? Safety. Like those
Mm.
are the things. So it's just safer to stay in your bed than go do the
That's so
workout.
true. Before we get to that final T, I'm super curious of you. Do you have a psychology background, or did you just
Yeah, so I
really
have
go deep in this?
I have a psychology background. I also have a master's in communication disorders, which does help in this world I'm
100%.
in.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
coming through. That's why I
Yeah.
asked.
And I kind of go deep into some of the neuroscience stuff. It's interesting because I think my approach to things is pretty um like sometimes people say like you're tough love with a smile. Like so I'm
You're an
pretty
East Coaster.
straightforward. Yeah. I mean my Boston comes out here. So kind of tell it like it is. Um but yet I have some empathy and compassion. And I think you could go down this whole like very woo, we could do all the woo stuff and go down that
Yeah.
path. That all intrigues me and I like some of it, but I think most of the time I go back to an approach of like, what are our facts? What
Yeah.
do we want to think about facts? Also, energy. I mean, that's another thing to think about, like where helping people notice um w- where they're putting their energy when they light up. It's very interesting. Sometimes you'll have a conversation, I'll have a coaching call and someone will get on and they'll kind of like tell me their whole problem, right?
Yeah.
Again, there's no real problem, but they tell me the situation. And then as we start to talk about it, we come up with solutions or possibilities, and the energy in the conversation shifts. Their tone of voice shifts,
Mhm, mhm,
and
mhm.
they become much more engaged, lively. And I think noticing that kind of thing I do a lot of that too, pointing that out to people because sometimes you get stuck in your own. way. But yeah, psychology, neuroscience, communication disorders, experience.
Mm.
I mean, all the things. It kind of, I mean, I do have an official certification in coaching, but I really think the vast majority comes from of the work I do has come from other places.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I
yeah.
think life definitely gives you a lot
Yep.
of skills. It's interesting that you shared w when you kinda tap into that thing that people are excited about,
Mm-hmm.
in having done sales for over 2 decades, I'll immediately hear their tone, their tonality, the speed of how they're
Yeah.
speaking will change. The way their eyes literally light up, like we say, "Oh, their eyes light up." Their eyes will actually get wider. They'll become more animated, and you
Yep.
immediately know, "Oh, like, I just hit, like, oh, they're super passionate about black and white photography," and you can just
Mm-hmm.
this they change, like, literally right before your eyes, but it kinda goes back to the ability to reflect. You have to be present enough in the moment to
Yep.
to to watch for that cue.
It's so true. And I think the other thing to notice is like, I don't work with people in one specific industry. Okay. So my
Mm,
clients are not all in real estate. Some are, but not all of them.
yeah,
And that also allows me to kind of see things from multiple sets of eyes, I like to
yeah,
say, and recognize that really the problems or the tenets of any business are universal.
yeah,
And I would encourage your listeners to kind of just notice their interactions with other service people, with other people that are in sort of a consulting slash sales role when you're buying whatever, right? Or you're seeking some type of consult. Like, just notice that it is all of this, the principles are all the same,
they're all the same.
and you can note, like, that lighting up piece, right?
Yeah.
Notice yourself when you light up in a conversation when someone said something to you. So it's anyway, that's kind of a little tangent, but
I
that
love I you have no idea how much I love when I'm sitting in front of a salesperson who is just so good at what they do.
yeah.
Like, it's hard for me to be sold because I'm enamored by it's like a master class. It's like
Yep, yep.
I'm like, "Oh my god, I love the way you asked me that question because you set up this other," and I'm, like, enthralled, or I'll start asking them questions about the process,
Mhm.
and it's versus and we've all had that really, like, horrible salesperson who's just trying to beat you over the head until you make a purchase, and
Right, right.
it's a completely different experience.
It is.
But I agree. I mean, I personally think, to talk about real estate, people in the market don't change the market. It's people outside of the market who come into the market who change the market.
Mhm.
That's what
Mhm.
gentrification is. It's people
Yep.
who came in, saw value, and then made the change. And that's like literally what it is. And so I think there is a great strength because there are core tenets of all businesses for
Yep.
them to be profitable, all of them across the
Yep.
board. There's patterns, and having somebody who's not in it, I personally think it's almost an added strength because, if you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Mhm.
And if you're
Mhm.
outside of it, the toolbox is a little bit bigger and
Totally.
you can reflect it in a different way. I mean, this conversation isn't dissimilar. We've woven in working out. We've woven in your practice before, or your education before getting into this. We've talked about fashion, or like all these
Yeah.
other things
Right.
come into it,
Yep.
and they're all intertwined. And
They are.
it's just it's interesting, when I think when you kind of pull back and you look at it from this you think bigger about this
You
whole
do.
thing.
You do. You do. And our lives are the fitness, fashion, what all those things are more personal, right? But they totally integrate into business.
Yeah,
And so I always say, like, both topics are fair game. Most of my clients come to me saying, "Hey, I want to help grow my business and I'm feeling so overwhelmed." Um, and then when you dig deeper into that, yes, I'm going to help you grow your business, and let's figure out the overwhelm part too, because there's probably something personal in there too that
for
feels
sure.
overwhelming. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So,
Yeah, and
yeah.
even with overwhelm, which I've definitely lived there more than once in my life,
Uh-huh. We
is
all have,
usually
yeah.
when you have multiple categories in your life that
Yes.
are, I don't want to say out of control, but they're more out of control. Like
Right.
if your business isn't doing well, and then your personal life isn't doing well, and your kids
Yep.
aren't doing well, then everything is overwhelming because you have so many areas that
Yes.
you're trying to correct. But if you just have one category, if your relationship is amazing, your home life is just outstanding, your friends they're all doing great, your family's amazing, like everything's great, and then your business has a problem, way more manageable.
Way more manageable. Way more, like there's that old school exercise, the wheel of life, it's called, and you
Yes.
kind of, right? So, yeah,
I'm,
so
I'm,
I love thinking about that more as like facets of life. There's I kind of got down to 7 facets, and just assessing where you are in each of those on a scale of 1 to 10 is
yeah.
very helpful. And then what would make it a 10? You have to kind of go back and ask yourself that. Like, if
Yeah.
this is only 6, what would a 10 look like? So,
Which, which I love that you actually brought that up, because that goes all the way back to the beginning of this conversation, stepping back and evaluating.
right, right. It's the same thing. So, I'm going to go to the last T in trust because that relates to this.
Please.
That last T in trust stands for take action. And big thinkers are not just sitting around Googling and listening to podcasts and reading books. I know they're doing all 3 of those things or using Chat GPT, right? Um, but which I would classify as passive action. So if you've ever been in the place where you think, oh my gosh, I'm doing all the things and nothing's changing. Are you doing things? Are you taking passive action, which is almost like absorbing knowledge versus literally doing something, which is
Yeah.
more of massive action. So that's big thinkers take the steps, they take the risk, they do the thing, they ask the question. That's massive action. Passive action is a
Mm.
lot easier. It's more comfortable because we can all do it in the, confines of our car or our house or whatever without having to talk to anyone.
Yeah.
But that's really what I would call passive action, and you need to take some massive action.
It's a good point. I'm talking to you now on the tales of a retreat, and the funny thing with retreat, the most of the conversations I hear are, oh, it's all the same information, just said in a different way, or I have a whole bunch of notes from this, and then
Mhm.
it's passive. They're not going to take action on any of those
Yeah.
items, and so it basically all just felt good, but it wasn't effective use of
Mhm.
time.
Mhm.
At the end of the day.
Mhm. So you've kinda asked yourself, okay, if it was such great information, which I'm sure it was, why are you not taking action, right? Why? And there's some thought that you're having that thinks, "Oh, yeah, it sounds good, but it's not gonna move the needle." Or, "It's just would be that sounds so hard. I don't have enough time." Right? So that's where you kinda have to go back to that very first thing of thought options.
Yeah.
You know, what if it did move the needle? Are you giving that equal airtime? Are you giving that possibility equal airtime? Or are you just like going back to, nope, I don't think so. So that's kind of a thought option slash take action intertwining.
The trust acronym, that's
Hmm.
by far one of the most powerful ones I've heard in a long time, because it really breaks down very different categories that all
Yep,
piece together
they do. They do.
beautifully. Like it's so well thought out.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious how did you get there? How did you figure that all
So
out?
this is actually kind of a fun story. So I write this book. It's published, it becomes an Amazon bestseller,
Nice.
and
Congrats.
thank you, and, I've been on, it's funny you said this is like your 130th or whatever you said, guest, right? You've had on the podcast, because 'cause I've been a guest on, I think I counted the other day, 134 podcasts, okay? So
Amazing.
that's kind of funny, but I had to start to really talk about what is a big thinker. Now, in the book, I talk about it, but
Yeah.
I don't use this acronym, this trust acronym. at all in the book. I came up with this afterward. And it was really assessing when someone said to me, describe what big thinking is, or what do big thinkers do, or what do they have in common. I started to sort of synthesize all of these pieces of information, thoughts I have, um, you know, my areas of expertise. And I came up one day, I was like, I wrote them down, and somehow I was like, really what you have to do here is trust yourself. I think that's where it came from. And then I thought, okay, if really what you have to do is trust yourself, then how can these sort of tenets fit into that? So that's how it came into play.
That's so interesting. It's funny because
Yeah.
from doing this podcast, I've been asked to be on other podcasts, and people always want to know, like, what's the through line when you talk
Yeah.
to all these guests? Like,
Yeah.
and I came up with the ping pong, the racehorse, and the tourist. And
Okay. That's funny.
so it's similar to your but it
Yeah.
like it just kind of evolved out of me trying to articulate it, but then how do I say it in a compelling way?
Right.
And so and
That's exactly how this happened.
yeah, and it's
Same
like,
thing.
oh, like ping pong, it obviously conjures like, oh, this is like, that's a weird thought, or like racehorse.
Uh-huh.
And so yeah, like with you, it's like trust is very, it's okay, that's clear, I got that, and then you break it down. And so yeah,
Mhm.
it's interesting because I appreciate it because I feel like I've kind of Forrest Gumped my way into the same
Same thing. It's the more
thing.
you talk about something, the more it solidifies and gels in your head, and you're like, "Oh,
Yeah.
yeah." So that's how.
It's
That's the secret behind, or the story behind the word.
well, I think that's the secret behind work is, it's like you could not have set out to discover that unless you set out to just do the work, like just show up,
Mhm.
be
Mhm.
consistent. And then is it one of my favorite books? It's from Miyamoto Musashi. It's called The Book of Five Rings. I
Okay.
read it when I was 18. It changed my direction. But one of the chapters is about discovering the spirit of the thing itself. And his
Hmm.
whole point is you don't discover it until you do
Do
it.
it.
Like you
Yep.
just, when you continue to do it day in and day out, like the spirit of the thing reveals itself, but it's
Yep.
only through the efforts and actions that it'll come to fruition. And
Yeah.
so I love that's how you found it.
Last chapter of my book, it's about the work worth doing.
Mm,
So, like, kind of what you and I are talking are about here, this is the work worth doing. Like, this is the stuff, if you can
yeah.
kinda spend time in this space, your work is gonna become so much easier.
All right. And I'm going to challenge the listeners. If you actually listen to this whole podcast from the beginning to now, and you actually just listen to our tonality, and the speed of talk, when we got excited talking about these things, you can actually hear the change in the way that we're speaking. And so that's how it shows up.
So true. So true. That's a good one.
Yeah. If somebody wants to find you or your book, what's the best way for them to do so?
Yeah, so I think the easiest thing is to go to Andrea's with an S, links with an S, andreaslinks.com. And you're going to find links to the book and the podcast and all the things. There's a quiz on there that I would really encourage your listeners to take. It kind of helps you
Mm.
figure out where you are in this journey of work worth doing, or where you are in life and business. It gives you a framework there. So go take the quiz. But I'm also on LinkedIn and Instagram, Andrea Liebross Coaching, and I would love to connect with anyone. And I'm always open for a conversation. So if you want to have a chat, just tell me and we can find a time.
Love it. Thank you. I really appreciate your time. This was such a fun conversation.
Thanks for having me.